Hi, and welcome to the Google for Education live stream. Before we get started, I just want to make sure everyone knows that we are recording this so you can watch it back later, and we will be sending out all of the links that we talk about today along with the recording. And so today we'll be talking about building custom dashboards with Data Studio, which is a free tool from Google. My name's Ann Nash, and I'm a regional program manager on the Google for Education team. And I'm based out of Chicago, and I work with schools across the Midwest. I'll turn it over to my teammate Cassie to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Cassie Caputo. I'm also an account manager on the Google for Education team, and I work with school districts in the South Central region of the United States. And so we also have, again, like we said before, this live stream will be recorded. There's a Go link for the past live streams where you can also find this live stream when it's over. So first, we're going to kick off with some of the updates that we announced during ISTE. These will include updates to G Suite for Education, Chromebooks for Education, some of the new AR and VR products that are available, and some program updates as well. So first, some of the G Suite for Education updates. There are two big classroom updates I know many of you have been waiting on for a while. So the first one being the classwork page, which lets teachers organize assignments and questions by grouping them into modules and units. So it'll make it much easier to find those assignments and announcements as you go. Next, we have new people and settings pages. So this will give teachers a unified place to manage students, co-teachers, and guardians. And there's a new settings page where teachers can add a classroom description, change the course code, and control overall classroom settings, just making it much easier for the teacher to organize their day-to-day and information about their classroom. A few new updates to Google Forms that I know teachers have been waiting for a long time as well. So soon, it's not quite launched yet, but before back to school is the timeline that we're aiming for. And again, all the links to these updates will be sent to you in the follow-up email. So no need to jot down any notes. But soon, teachers will be able to create and assign form quizzes directly from Google Classroom, as opposed to having to set up the form and link it in separately, saving you time and streamlining the assignment process. So quizzes let teachers create questions, grade questions or by student, auto grade checkbox, and multiple choice grid questions, just overall making the process of assigning and grading quizzes much faster and easier for that personalized experience. You'll also be able to use locked mode for quizzes. So this basically locks the form onto the screen so that students can't navigate outside of the browser and they need to stick inside the form to answer those test questions. So just offering another environment for you to hand out quizzes and tests via forms. And there'll be 6 new machine learning features added to forms as well that'll help you grade assignments by student or by question much easier and faster. So basically, you'll be able to do this in bulk as opposed to individually like you have in the past. So moving on, there are a couple exciting updates to Google Earth as well. We know that teachers have been using Google Earth as an education tool for a long time, but it hasn't been well equipped that way. So we've added some new features to explore in real time weather, ocean data, for example. You can also use the measuring tool to measure certain areas of landmass for those geography type classes. So the measure tool is one of the most requested features in Google Earth, and it gives you the ability to measure distances in areas. Teachers can also author Voyager stories. So over the past year, we've joined up with some of the world's leading storytellers, scientists, and nonprofits to bring the planet to life with Voyager, which is a showcase of interactive guided tours built to inspire people to explore the world. We're introducing new classroom resources as well. If you check out the Google Earth Education website, which we'll actually be linking into the follow-up email as well, and Google Earth quizzes. So teachers and students can now test their knowledge on natural wonders and for example, magnificent castles and palaces around the world in Google Earth. So these quizzes can be shared directly to the classroom stream for your students to try out. We have some new exciting updates to Chromebooks and devices as well. The one you've probably heard of the most recently is the Acer Chromebook Tablet 10. So this is the very first Chrome tablet available to offer just a more versatile learning experience for possibly those younger students who aren't quite ready for a keyboard and mouse, or to offer a more dynamic experience in tablet mode. So to the next slide, we have lots of content to go along with these as well. This is also part of a launch where Android apps will be available on Chromebooks very soon, and just extending the capabilities of your devices. So you might be wondering, okay, what about a stylus? Those tend to be expensive. We have a stylus by Staedtler, which is really targeted at the education user. So they're meant to be durable and affordable, so they're easy to replace. So we've thought about that too. And moving on to some of the more exciting capabilities on your Chrome Tab 10, AR and VR, so augmented reality and virtual reality will be able to be used on this Chrome tablet, specifically Expeditions and some of the AR content that's available as well. So Expeditions AR and VR. So the app is now available to download on Android and iOS, meaning you can use it on your Chrome Tablet 10. Expeditions AR is compatible with all ARCore and ARKit devices, so any of your Chromebook devices that have Android available on them. And we're also excited to announce Tour Creator. So we know you've been asking about this for a long time. We took educator feedback, and we're really excited that you can now start to create and film your own virtual reality tours that can be viewed in Expeditions, both your headsets and also on your Android tablet devices. And finally, our latest update for teachers is an update to the training center. So we're now referring to it as the Teacher Center. So in addition to all the level 1, level 2, and GCT content that you've been using to train on, we're including additional resources about applied digital skills, digital learning, digital citizenship as well. And so keep an eye out for some of those new resources for teachers. So with that, I will hand it off to our primary presenter of the day, Andrew Stillman. Thanks so much.
And thank you so much, Cassie. I just wanted to say it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, who's Andrew Stillman. He's a veteran NYC educator and administrator, and he's really well known for his prior work creating dozens of popular add-ons for G Suite, such as Doctopus, Autocrat, and Formule. He's a Google Certified Innovator and Google Developer Expert for G Suite and Google Apps Script, and he's now the Chief Product Officer at Amplified IT, a Google for Education premium partner. So without further ado, I'll turn this over to Andrew to lead us through Data Studio.
Thank you. So just by way of introduction, currently I work for Amplified IT, and Amplified Labs is the name of our kind of X division. But just so you understand who Amplified IT is, we're one of the leading partners in North America focused on enabling districts to get the most out of the Google platform. We don't sell Chromebooks. What we do is we offer consulting, training, regional collaboratives, and my part of the organization offers tools and technical expertise to assist schools in getting the most out of both the education offerings and increasingly the Google Cloud platform. We were just honored at Google Next with the Global Cloud Education Partner of the Year Award, which we're feeling awfully chuffed about, as our Scottish founders would say. So really excited to be with you, and if you don't know Amplified IT, we'd love to get to know you. One of the core focuses of the Labs team is really this word transformation. We used to use the word digital transformation. I think the appropriate word is cloud transformation. How do you understand schools actually running differently? How do you understand the relationships between students and educators actually shifting and changing because of what the cloud allows us to do? So this is the question that really gets me out of bed every morning, is thinking about the horizon, if you will, of possibility, what's possible in schools. And we have some really interesting stuff just over the horizon as we start to think about what's happening in the Google Cloud Platform and some of the increasingly robust tools that are available there. So that's really why we're talking about Data Studio today. So Data Studio is a free tool. It is free by virtue of the fact that it plugs into so many different data sources, and many of those data sources are part of Google's paid platform for data analytics. The actual Data Studio product itself, though, comes at no charge, and we're going to be talking about that in relationship to Google Cloud Platform. Google Cloud Platform is basically Google's compute as a service. They're offering essentially all the robust power of the computing that they use to run their core products. And they've basically turned it into a set of commercial products that you can pay for by the minute, by the second, essentially renting compute power from Google. So it's a really just an incredibly expansive universe of compute resources that are available there. And schools, I believe, are really just beginning to scratch the surface of that. So Google Cloud Platform is going to be related to Google Data Studio in a way that we're going to see in just a little bit. The reason I think Google Data Studio is so important to education as a product is that so much of what educators do is connected to things that can be measured. And obviously not everything can be measured with a number, and it's super important for us to remember that. But when you're dealing with district achievement data, student attendance, history of tardiness, history of behavior, any of these kinds of things can be brought together into views that allow school districts to make better decisions. And so it's, I think, a perennial struggle in school districts to get data out to the right stakeholders so that they can be empowered to make good educational decisions. And so, I like this quote because it comes from the tech sector, and it represents this kind of brutal belief in data that exists in the tech sector. If we have data, let's look at data. If all we have are opinions, let's go with mine. And I think a lot of educators can think to faculty meetings where wouldn't it be nice if there was actually data that we could all be looking at instead of just spouting opinions. So Data Studio is a tool that I think is going to really empower educators to bring data to the table and represent it in really powerful ways. And so the way Data Studio works essentially is you start with the idea of who can access the source data, and you create data connectors or data sources. It offers a robust Explorer tool that allows you to just get a handle on what's in your data. And then it has this beautiful report builder, which we'll see in just a second. That report builder lets you publish those reports and share them just like you would a Google Doc. So Data Studio reports and connectors both use the same sharing model as anything else that lives in Google Drive. They can also be published, and they can be embedded in third-party websites. So this is kind of the workflow that you want to imagine anyone from a high school teacher posting a breakdown of how students did on a test to someone in the superintendent's office posting dashboards for the public to consume, school report cards. So, as I said, Data Studio turns your data into dashboards and reports that are easy to read, share, and they're completely customizable. Really the emphasis is on telling good stories, using data to tell a compelling story to support those educational decisions. Some key concepts in Data Studio. You want to think about your reports and your data sources as kind of two separate entities, and they can both be shared in different ways. So you may have reports that you only want certain people to view, and you definitely don't want them accessing or manipulating. And you might have data sources that you don't want certain people to have access to. And so the ability to control permissions on each of these is an important concept. Under data sources, what you'll see is that Google has created this expansive universe of connectors, ways that you can connect to different kinds of data sources. So with that said, we're going to actually dive into just a quick example. we're going to imagine that we have some data about student attendance. So over here, I've got an example of spreadsheet data. And this is the kind of data that Data Studio likes to consume. You'll notice it's in a rectangle. The data lives in columns. There is no requirement that you have a date in the kind of data that Data Studio takes in. But if you have a date field, it allows you to make even more interesting timeline representations. And so this is currently an aggregation of average attendance by week in a school district that happens to have, I believe, 3 schools and 12 grade levels. And so this is the kind of data that we might traditionally have built a chart in Google Sheets. What we're going to see is that Data Studio allows you to create connectors, and lost track of my tabs here. So if I go into my data sources and I click this little plus icon, you'll see I have a range of different connector types. And some of these are totally irrelevant to education. They have to do with search ads or ad manager, but some of them are really quite interesting. The Google Sheets connector is, I think, going to be the most useful and obvious starting point for most folks. So because we're connecting to Google Sheets, I'm going to click that one. And you'll see I have all the items listed in my drive here. Go ahead and click the spreadsheet I was just in. And you'll see I have a single tab called by school. Click connect. And you'll see it detects the headers in that sheet, turns them into fields. I have the ability to set aggregations, which is how do you want that data rolled up when you filter against, let's say, date. Do you want to sum the numbers? Do you want to average the numbers? Do you want to count the values? And because we're dealing with average attendance, we'll say, let's average the numbers. For grade level, if I have lots of grade levels represented, typically I'm going to want to take the max of the set of values, because that's the actual grade. I don't want to be adding together grade levels. So you have some aggregator functionality as you create that connector. And then I can either explore, which takes me into like a visual explorer where I can quickly snap around in the data and look at it, or I can create a report. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a report. And so you'll see that connector is now being added to the report. And I have a nice canvas here where I can start editing. So let's call this average attendance dashboard. And very quickly, you'll see I can start bringing different chart types out. So up top, you'll see all the different charts and filter types that I can bring into the canvas. I'll go ahead and just drag across using a bar chart. And you'll see the tool is smart. It sort of understands the data well enough to make a suggestion. So these are average attendance broken out by school. And on the right, you'll see I have the ability to pull different fields in. Dimensions are typically like string values. They're like text. Whereas metrics come in blue. You'll see metrics like grade level. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch out actually, and we're going to say that our grade level is the breakdown dimension that we want to use. And then we're going to, for our metric, we're going to graph average attendance. And looks like we're sorting by grade level. And you'll see I have all kinds of options to style this differently. So I can turn the orientation of these. I can show labels if I want. Tons of styling options here. Really quite powerful. So let's move that down, and let's imagine we also want to do a time series. I'm going to pull that in real quick and just drag it across. And you'll see it's giving me this kind of sawtooth. And that's actually because these are weekly dates. It's actually filling in the missing dates. And so we're getting this jagged once a Monday appearance on the graph. To fix that, I can go into style and I can say, what do we do for missing data? Well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a linear interpolation for the dates. And right now we're not looking at something all that meaningful, so let's see why that is. Well, let's see, the date range dimension is the week of, that's correct. And then our breakdown dimension, let's say we want to break it down by grade level. The metric. Right now we're graphing grade level, which is why we see a perfectly straight line. So let's graph instead average attendance. That's what more like it. Now, that's not the best view of this data, right? If I were a middle school science teacher, which I used to be, I wouldn't give myself a very good grade because I've not set a scale that makes sense. So let's go in and figure out where that is. Well, if I scroll down, you'll see the, where is it? Left y-axis. I can actually set a minimum. Let's go ahead and set that to 70 or 75. And there we go. Get a nice breakdown graph that shows me variations in attendance across time. Some other cool features here include like a date range filter. So maybe I'm interested in exploring specific periods of time. Or I can put a filter control where perhaps I'm interested in filtering by school. Or let's put another one in there, just did a copy paste. And you can see on the right, I can control what dimension is being shown in that filter. We'll do another one for grade level. And so you just move this stuff around. I can change this canvas size if I want. Move this down. And let's say I want to put a nice and branded header on the top of this. Go ahead and let the world know what this is. We'll say Libertyville, which I think is an actual place in lots of states, school district. And so here I am just putting a text widget. And I could put a subheader, but you get the idea. And you can even do cool things like insert images. So if we wanted to brand this with our school district, go ahead and throw a logo in here. It's going to let me pick a file, and I just happen to have a Liberty Bell on my desktop. So we'll go ahead and pull that in. And you know, there's quite a lot I could do to make this look nicer, but as you can see, in just a matter of a few minutes, I've now got this explorable dashboard. You can see these filters are really quite cool because I can then empower my end users to explore on their own. And I'm not giving them a spreadsheet. I'm not giving them these clunky kind of business side tools. I'm giving them just what they need to understand the data. So this is a great example of a dashboard just very quickly thrown together using Google Sheets data. So that was really just to show you kind of how quick and easy it is to get up and running. Something additional to note is I do have sharing, and I just want to make sure it's really clear. This is private, so if this did contain educational, kind of more sensitive internal data, it uses the same sharing and permissions model as anything you store in Google Drive. I can change this. So if I wanted to make it anyone with a link and actually be accountable to my community for this data, I could do that. So this is now going to be visible to anyone I provide the link to. The other really cool thing is that you can embed this. So you'll see right down here under the file menu, I can do an embed report. If I enable embedding, I either get a URL or code that I can put into a third-party website. So if I have a district portal or a district website, I can put both public and private dashboards. And if they're private and they're embedded, it just uses the logged in user's Google session. So you could have internal dashboards that are part of an existing staff intranet or administrative site. So super powerful stuff. So that's kind of the really quick crash course. What I want to emphasize is that we just used one connector type, and that was the Google Sheets connector. You can also do file uploads. So if you have CSV files and you don't want to be loading them into Sheets, you can load them into what's called a Google Cloud bucket. Google Cloud Bucket is just like a hard drive in the cloud. There are limitations. Both Google Sheets and file uploads are going to not work with very large data sets. We'll talk more about that in a second. These other connector types, like Cloud SQL, is a MySQL data store that you can pay by the month for in GCP. BigQuery, we'll talk about in a second, is a very, very large data store that's suitable to huge longitudinal data sets, like yearly attendance for every student, that kind of size. Google Analytics, if you aren't using it on your website, it's a great tool. It's a free way to track user behavior on your websites anonymously, of course. And MySQL it's also very interesting. If you have existing MySQL applications in your district, even ones that are locally hosted, you can actually connect to them using Data Studio. For the folks that are running district websites, if you're not using Google Analytics, there's a really easy use case around just spinning up a dashboard to see what kind of traffic your district website is getting. And there are templates available in the Google Data Studio template gallery that plug right into Google Analytics. So you don't even need to build these reports yourself. So I highly recommend checking out Google Analytics. We just talked about Google Sheets, here's another example that we pulled together of student demographic data for a school district in Virginia. So this is Norfolk, where Amplified IT is located. And this is the kind of aggregate high-level data that a lot of communities want to be able to see about their student school district. It's often required by state law for accountability purposes. Sometimes it's school by school. So you could imagine, if you will, actually redoing the way school report cards are done in some places using Data Studio. And you can see, again, this is just publicly available information. And this is backed by a Google Sheet. So we just took a bunch of information off the Norfolk Public Schools website and pulled it into a sheet and built this. The next example here is actually connected to a tool that Amplified Labs sells, and that's called LittleSys for Classroom. LittleSys for Classroom is basically an SIS sync utility that installs typically on the school's network, and it's used to synchronize classes classes in Google Classroom with the student information system. So it keeps all the rosters and guardians and classes up to date. It has additional functionality which allows it to basically pull everything that there is to know about Google Classroom into a report. And I'll just quickly show an example of that. So here is actually a Windows server, and I'm on a Chromebook right now. I want to call that out. It's super interesting. I'm remote desktoped into a Windows server that's running on Google Cloud. So Google is hosting this Windows server. For those of you that are just getting used to the idea of GCP, you don't have to run Google products on GCP. GCP is compute as a service. So I'm running a virtual machine that I am renting the compute power for from Google, and I'm running Windows Server. And the reason I'm doing this is a lot of districts are still very much attached to Google Server, and I'm running LittleSys, which is the app I was just talking about. And this is our classroom overview tool, which has a report that you can export, called the classroom analysis report. And that report comes down as an Excel file that has a whole bunch of different tabs of information in it. But what we've done with some customers who wanted this engagement is we have actually built a report to help them getting insights into how Classroom is being adopted across their district. So what I'm loading right here is the dashboard for a school district in California. And what this has allowed us to do is really understand how many active classes, for example, are out there right now in use by teachers. And this data is old. This is a snapshot from some time last year. But go ahead and actually just start to understand which classes are actually in use, which ones have more than a certain number of students. You'll see some cases, these are classes that really are not being used because they only have one student in them. And you can see teacher org unit is part of what we pull. So for those districts that have multiple school sites in the district, this can be a great way to actually do comparisons from site to site and understand what those adoption patterns in Google Classroom look like. And this report is multiple pages deep. So we have things like the ability to look at coursework assignments and to understand how many assignments are given by which teachers. We also have a timeline that allows us to visualize when the majority of coursework was assigned. And this might be a useful tool for looking at the impact of training and whether training has actually boosted adoption and usage. So really exciting stuff. Again, it's just a Google Sheet, right? And in this case, it's a Google Sheet full of data that we were able to pull using the Classroom API to give a lot more insight than we might otherwise have. So that's a great example of using Data Studio. The next one here would be, what do we do if the size of Google Sheets becomes an issue? And also, I guess the question, how do we keep our data live? So there's a couple of ways we can think about that. A lot of school districts have the ability to export CSV files from their student information system. So typically, your SIS will have a report or template engine builder that lets you create scheduled queries that get delivered either to the server or to an SFTP or secure file transfer folder that lives on the district's network. And those files often are used to synchronize other EdTech products. What we've come up with is a way to actually synchronize those files directly to Google Sheets. And in the case where Google Sheets is not going to be robust enough because it has a limit, it's actually just 2 million cells, we've tapped into BigQuery. BigQuery is a giant, like, petabyte scale data store that Google uses internally and has turned into a commercial product. And it's just outrageously performant for the size of the data sets that it can hold. And so we've built a tool called Local Hero, which, very similar to Little Sys, installs either on a Windows or a Mac. It's a piece of client software, and it schedules the delivery of data. So it'll actually pick up those CSV files and load them into Sheets or load them into BigQuery. And I show all the different places in which you can have control over access and security in this diagram. So both your Sheets and your BigQuery tables have permissions, and then Data Studio also has access permissions. I want to be clear that there's nothing hacky about this in the sense of security. It's as secure as any other resource that you have in the cloud, in Google's cloud. And so with that, we're going to look quickly at what Local Hero looks like. And I managed to open a Chrome browser on my Windows server. Use myself there. And so this is what Local Hero looks like. And it's right now I have 3 what I call jobs. Right, these are sync jobs. The one on top is pushing daily attendance, which is a CSV file, and it's going to be appending it to a BigQuery table. If I go into that job, you'll see the way this is set up is it's got this nice stepper. I've got my data source defined here. So this is just pointing to a file that lives on my local network. Again, this is the file that let's say my student information system might be delivering every day. And this is the kind of information it holds. Looks awfully like attendance data. And on the right, I've connected it to a BigQuery instance. And you might wonder, well, what does BigQuery look like? BigQuery, if you go to it through the Google interface, and it's actually just gotten a brand new interface, but I'm not used to the new interface yet. So what you're looking at is the old BigQuery interface. The new one is much prettier. And what you see here is I have a data source, data set, and I have tables within that data set. So if I click on attendance LH demo, and I click details or preview, you'll see this is just a small slice of the data that's in here. And this data set has over 1,200,000, or almost 1,200,000 records in it. And just to give a sense of how this performs, let's do a quick query. And what you'll notice here is this is SQL. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with SQL, it is such a common database querying language. It's a search query language. It's been around for decades. There's so many resources online for how to use it. So BigQuery uses SQL. So it means anyone in your district who has familiarity with databases is going to be very at home understanding BigQuery. And so I'm going to select star from this table where, let's say, attendance equals A, right? Just pull my absences and give you a sense of how fast this runs. In 1.4 seconds, it just finished a query against 1.2 million records. So it's just so fast, and these data sets can be absolutely gigantic. So this is what BigQuery looks like. And if I'm back in this job that I was just talking about, looking at, you'll see I've selected the data table that I'm going to be pushing it to, and I've mapped all of the CSV source fields onto the destination fields that I want to load it to in BigQuery. And the gist of this is you can either append or clear and replace that BigQuery table when you push the data, and you can automate it. So if I wanted this to run every hour or just once a day, I can schedule it, and I can get notified when it runs, and I can click save. And so effectively what I've just done is I've set up a sync between my student information system and Google Cloud. And the dashboards that I'm going to be building against this it'll mean that they're always live. They always show data as it lives in the student information system. So what I just showed was a BigQuery job. You can also do it with Google Sheets. And so let's pop back over and actually see an example of a dashboard, a couple dashboards that were built that way. Before we get to that, I do want to show this one off. This one's done using Google Sheets, and we have a couple districts that have done this, where they have a help desk ticketing system that they have set up an export from. And so they're using some queries to just pull their Chromebook tickets, and they're downloading that as a CSV, and they're using Local Hero to push it up and generate a rich dashboard that allows them to explore their Chromebook help desk issues. And then this next one is just another example of an attendance dashboard. And what I want to call out in this limit of 2 million cells is it's going to be very hard to do an attendance dashboard without BigQuery, unless you're rolling it up. So if you want to have really high resolution, you'll want to do something like this. So here's a dashboard that is actually built against that BigQuery table we were just looking at. And so you'll see how quickly that loaded. Go ahead and I'm going to open up the date range to pull in the entire school year. Go ahead and apply that. And blazing fast. And you'll see on the left, let's do some exploration on this data. Let's just pull back Wildcat Elementary. And so again, that just ran against 1.2 million data rows. And so this is attendance on about 9,000 students for every single day of an entire school year, loaded into BigQuery. And you can see, I have the ability to then really understand equity issues. For example, if I wanted to do some comparisons across groups like ethnicity or gender and try to understand if there are patterns within this attendance data. I also have the ability, if I want, to bring in single students. So I have the ability here, for example, to actually type in a student ID. So I could drill down to actually just see a single student's attendance across the year. So it is possible, if you are willing to accept the security and privacy responsibility of this, to actually put student identifiable information here. And that's obviously a judgment call districts need to make. But so here I'm actually seeing the full attendance history of a single student across that school year. So pretty cool once you get BigQuery involved. The next thing I wanted to mention is that it wouldn't be a Google product if it did not support really robust integrations. And so by integrations, I mean there's the ability for developers and even school districts to build their own Data Studio connectors. And so Amplified Labs has done this for 2 of our tools. We have a popular tool called Gopher for Chrome and another one called Gopher for Users. And they're mainly administrative tools meant for managing Chromebooks and G Suite users. However, we've built in Data Studio connectors that connect to like a live snapshot of the devices and users on that domain. So I'll show a couple of examples here. And the beauty about building third-party connectors like this is we can actually provide you the report templates, so everything comes together really quickly. So I'm going to show you an example of a dashboard that's actually running against some sample data from one of our partner school districts. And I'm going to go ahead and filter for the month of May, since the summer is not a very interesting time to look at Chromebook use. So let's look at May 2018. And what we're looking at here is Chromebook utilization graph. So this is actually taking all that rich session information that's available through the Chrome API, and it's basically aggregating it and trying to understand what percentage of devices are being used in the different org units in this district. It's just taking a second to load. This one, unfortunately, is connected to Sheets, and we're loading a large amount of data. I'm not sure why that just happened. Let's try this again. Let's just do last 30 days. This was working great just a few minutes ago. All right, let's move on. I think if I do it on the slide, you'll get the idea. So what you see on the left is what we're supposed to be seeing, and that is you get a line graph showing you by org unit what percentage of those devices has been in use on that calendar day, which can be a fantastic way to manage resources inside of a district. When you think about where do I need more Chromebooks, who doesn't have enough Chromebooks, who's claiming they need more but actually doesn't need more. So looking at those usage patterns can be very valuable. The other 2 dashboards, which I'm not going to show just because we don't have time, is the auto update expiration, that's when your Chrome software updates are going to stop for that device. It's thought to be kind of the end of life when you want to think about replacing that Chromebook. This report gives you the breakdown of where all those different makes and models live that have an auto update expiration. It gives you the dates, so you can actually understand a timeline and really clearly see when the different chunks of your fleet are going to need to be replaced. And it lets you see it across the different org units in the district. The last one is a Chrome OS version health. Just lets you look at what Chrome versions are out there in the wild. We have a similar set of connectors for your users. So Gopher for Users has a connector that will allow you to see users who've never logged in, and it'll bucket them into different groups. So you can look at login recency, you can look at 2-factor enrollment. So if you're trying to make sure that you have a really secure set of administrative accounts that all have 2-factor enabled, it's a great window into that. And then for directory visibility. So this is a just about to be released part of Gopher for Users. And these connectors live in a gallery, basically. When you go to choose a data source in Data Studio, you can just go type Gopher and you'll see our connectors right there in the gallery. What I haven't mentioned thus far is the costs of BigQuery and how are school districts supposed to get started with BigQuery. BigQuery is not free. However, it is extremely cheap. And they actually don't bill you for the amount of storage used. They bill you on the amount of querying you do. So the total size of the queries that you run against BigQuery is what you get billed for. And what we've seen with some of the dashboards we've built is that you get a lot of kind of free rope to play with in BigQuery. And it's only once you start doing a lot of very, very large queries that you find you're going to end up having to pay very much. That said, you cannot set it up without a billing option in GCP. And for schools that are maybe uncomfortable putting that on a credit card, Amplified IT will actually take care of that for you. So if you want to approach us about setting up billing in Google Cloud Platform, we can bill you with a purchase order. Basically, you're prepaying for a certain amount of Google Cloud Platform credit. And basically, we take care of that. We monitor it. You pay us by purchase order. So that's an option. There's a link here if you're interested in getting in touch with us about setting up that GCP billing so you can get going with BigQuery. And with that said, looks like I'm ending just about in the nick of time. And let's see if there's any questions.
Thanks so much, Andrew. We've been monitoring the Q&A dashboard throughout the session. So if anyone had a question there, make sure that you check back. It might have already been responded to. I'll go through a couple here that we have not had a chance to respond to yet, and Andrew might be able to help us out. One question comes from Anna. So who is the intended audience for these dashboards? Can you easily create and share personalized dashboard for each student? Or is this only is this more of a general overview for administrators and teachers? Andrew, can you help us answer that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So presently, it is possible to create dashboards that are personalized, but it's not simple. So kind of like a yes and no in response to that. So yes, if a district wanted to build their own connectors, it would be quite possible for the dashboard to be aware of who the logged in user is, and then basically serve up information based on who that person is. But it takes some work to do that. So the majority of the dashboards that we've been playing with in districts are more for general consumption. So it might be that a school principal gets a dashboard on their Chromebooks, or the general public gets a dashboard, or the teachers get a dashboard allowing them to navigate information about all the students they teach. But it's not going to be like a caseload view unless you do a little bit of extra work developing your own connectors.
Andrew, another question that we had that was pretty popular was if they're using the Google Sheet as the connector, if the Google Sheet is updated, if that data is refreshed, does the dashboard automatically update as well?
So it would on page refresh, but if the page the dashboard is in is not refreshed, then the dashboard itself does not refresh. So if you had it, for example, running on a sign somewhere, you'd have to have something that causes the page to refresh in order for the data to refresh. But otherwise, yes, the answer is those dashboards are a dynamic view onto whatever is currently in the source.
Awesome. So our next question comes from Francisco, and he asks, can you query GCP SQL in the same fashion as big data?
As big data. I'm going to interpret that to mean so can you read it again? I'm not sure I totally understand the question. So, I mean, what I can say is that SQL, search query language, is a standard syntax that works across any SQL-like database. And so BigQuery is a SQL database, so it can be queried using SQL. I think that's what the question was intending.
Okay. We have another question. This comes from Lauren. So is there any intention to add current user filters on Data Studio? She'd love to make a report and have her teachers view only their data.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have not, I don't know what their roadmap is. So, but it's certainly, if I ever have the opportunity to give input to that team, I agree. That would be a fantastic feature.
Awesome. This is a really good question from Courtney. So she says that they're a small school, about 120 students with 50 Chromebooks. Is this a reasonable option for them to consider? Is Data Studio a good tool for them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's reasonable at any size, and it's not a tool that's specific to Chromebooks per se. The Chromebook reports I was just showing off are just one of 1,000 different use cases that you could use Data Studio for. So yeah, I would say any environment and any school would be well suited, and that I think you have to be aware of the limitations of Data Studio, some of which have been highlighted by these questions. But there's a huge range of use cases that are opened up by this, in my mind. And so yeah, any size school could benefit.
Great. Just wanted to have a shout out to Karen. She says that she loves Data Studio and uses it all the time, and that she wants to explore BigQuery and Local Hero. So Karen, just so you know, we will make sure that we link out not only a link to this recording, but also all of the different products and resources that we talked about today. You'll get that all in a follow-up email. There's also, I wanted to address Jamie Smith. Your question is pretty detailed, so I'm going to actually take that one offline and have Andrew take a look at it after this, and make sure that he's able to respond to you directly through the platform. And it looks like we've answered all of the questions that I'm seeing right now. If we haven't gotten to your question, we will take a look at all of this after the live stream is over and respond directly via the platform. And if there's any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. Like I said before, we will be sending out a link to this recording and all of the resources as a follow-up to everyone that registered. So thank you all so much for joining. We hope that you join us for our next live stream. Bye.
Thank you.